Here we are on the production floor of the Supro Amplifier factory in Port Jefferson, New York. And before us, we have an exploded Statesman amplifier. You can see here our all poplar wood cabinetry, speaker baffle with vintage correct grill cloth and Supro logo. Made in Kentucky by Eminence, a BD12 speaker. We got our heavy duty gauge speaker cable, our 12AX7 and 12AY7 preamp and reverb driver tubes, 5881 Sovtech power tubes. We got our custom 6-spring reverb pan and the front panel and back panel with associated knobs. And then you have the fully assembled chassis here with the multiple circuit boards already inside the amp and the transformers attached to the metal chassis. And then finally, the back panel of the amplifier. Here we have the circuit board from the Black Magic Reverb amplifier. We have all metal film resistors. These are 1% tolerance resistors, so that unit to unit, we have very, very consistent results. We use super high quality electrolytic caps that are all glued down to the board. These are 450 volt caps in most cases. We have belt and tube sockets across the whole thing. High quality Mylar film capacitors, as well as silver mica capacitors in critical tone stack positions. Custom made dual gang potentiometers, and as you can see, everything is securely mounted to the board, which then gets put into a custom aluminum chassis and bolted down. So we proudly make all of our amplifiers with super high quality materials, all down on circuit boards, so that unit to unit we get extremely low noise, consistent results, amplifier to amplifier. And now I'm going to take you into the room where we do the high voltage testing and burn-in for Supro amplifiers. Mike's job is to take each and every amplifier and put the pre-tested tubes inside the amplifier, fire it up to full voltage, and measure all the critical voltages within the amplifier to make sure that it's up to spec. Mike also has got a noise analysis system in here, as well as some oscilloscopes and all the other tools that he needs to ascertain that the amp is fully functional and ready to be burned in. Once the amplifier has been tubed up and has had all of the critical voltages measured and it passed those tests, the amplifier will then go onto one of these Burnin Racks. And what we've got going is a Pigtronics looper is actually playing audio into a special distribution system that's sending music into up to several dozen amplifiers at once. All of the amplifiers are turned on and turned up, and instead of plugging into speakers, they're actually plugged into dummy loads that are attached to the metal of the racks themselves. So the energy of the amplifiers, instead of coming out as blasting audio, is actually dissipated as heat, and in the wintertime actually heats this room as well. So come follow me onto the main factory floor, where we'll now see the assembly process. After 3 hours of burn-in, the amplifier comes off the rack, goes back into Mike's room, and gets retested after being burned in. Once the amplifier has been retested after 3 hours of burn-in, it comes out onto the main factory floor here once again, and we enter the assembly stage. Here, Jose is making sure that everything is tight and ready to go for final assembly. Next down the line, we have Sean, who's putting on the front faceplate panel and affixing the washers and nuts to the potentiometers. Everything has a specific torque value that it has to be screwed down to, and we strive to make every single amplifier the same as the one that came before it. So Sean's checking Jose's work, doing his piece, and then it moves on down the line to Brian. Brian is checking Sean's work and then putting on the back plate, which is on the rear side of the amp, and affixing the various power receptacle, jack, nuts, and washers to secure the back side of the amp. We actually get a look at Supro's vintage tube tester and its illustrious operator, Paul, Paul here is using this vintage tube matching machine to make sure that the tubes that are going to be stuffed in each amp are precisely matched. For the most part, our amplifiers are Class A self-biasing amplifiers, which means that when you change tubes, you never have to readjust the bias. All you have to make sure is that your tubes are extremely precisely matched. And when they are, you get very long-term, low-noise, high-performance tube amplification from our Supro power section. Moving on down the line here, you got Mike from the band Cryptoderia. When he's not busy shredding prog fusion metal, he's assembling amps and testing amps here in Port Jefferson. And what you see here is he's affixing the custom-made Supro BD12 speaker down to the baffle, which is also made of poplar like the rest of the cabinetry. Glenn is putting the reverb pan into the base of the cabinet. This gets screwed down, and it's inside this vinyl bag to prevent any oscillation from the amplifier creeping back and oscillating the reverb springs in an unwanted fashion. Now you can see here to my left is our audio torture chamber. All of the amplifiers, once they've been completely assembled, put in a cabinet, ready to rock, go in here and they get rocked at full volume. It's one of the major reasons that we do our production here in the United States. Now the final part of the assembly tables here, we see the last step happening, where Robbie and Bill, they're mounting the chassis inside the cabinet, screwing the back panel down, affixing the serial number panel that indicates all the rear panel functions on this combo. It goes into that little torture chamber, gets blasted, and then comes out onto here to go in a box and out the door to Musician's Friend, where it's waiting for you to order a Supro, plug in, and discover the legend. Thanks for joining us on this factory tour of the Supro electric guitar and amplifier factory in Port Jefferson, New York. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.